The Black Plague was a deadly disease that spread across Europe in the 14th century, killing millions of people. The disease spread quickly, especially in crowded cities, and people often died within days of showing symptoms like fever, swelling, and painful sores. The plague had a huge impact on society, causing fear, social breakdown, and economic problems. So today, we will know what did people eat during the Black Plague. Before I start, if you are new to the channel and love history, definitely subscribe to the History of Facts show and press the bell icon. Thank you. During the Black Death in the 14th century, people used various methods to try to protect themselves from the plague. One such method was the use of vinegar, which was believed to have cleaning and disinfecting properties. Boiling chicken in vinegar was a remedy that some people thought would help in fighting the disease, or at least in preventing it. During the Black Death, many people didn't understand germs and diseases like we do today. They believed in the power of certain substances like vinegar, which was thought to purify the body and the air. Vinegar was commonly used for cleaning and as a way to protect against bad smells, which were thought to carry disease. The idea behind boiling chicken in vinegar was based on the belief that this combination could somehow protect a person from the plague. The chicken might have been used for its nutrients, and vinegar would supposedly help cleanse or purify the body by fighting off the plague. The cooked chicken would be eaten by those trying to avoid the plague. It might have been believed that consuming such a dish would either help prevent infection or help fight the disease if someone was already infected. This was just one of many strange and often inactive remedies during the Black Death. People also tried wearing charms, using herbs, and even bathing in different substances like urine or rose water. After eating chicken with vinegar, people didn't stop. The next meal was even stranger. People believed that eating live snakes might cure or protect them from the plague. This idea came from a mix of fear, misinformation, and superstition. Since the plague was so deadly and no one understood how it spread, many desperate people tried anything they thought might help. Some believed that snakes had special powers to fight off disease, or that they could absorb bad energy and evil spirits that were thought to cause illness. The act of eating live snakes was not something everyone did, but it was reported in some areas. People would catch the snakes sometime from the wild and swallow them whole, sometime with even cooking them. This was seen as an extreme form of trying to fight the plague, and it became part of the chaos and panic that defined that period. This practice seems strange to us today, but it shows how fear and lack of knowledge about disease led people to do irrational things. It also highlights how during the Black Death, people were looking for anything, whether it made sense or not, that they thought could save them from the terrifying plague. Pigeons, which were often found in cities and towns, became a source of food when other meats were scarce. In many cases, the wealthy and the poor both turned to pigeons, as they could be easily caught or raised in small spaces like rooftops or towers. These birds were a more accessible option when other sources of food like cattle or sheep had become too expensive or were being affected by the plague. Urine was seen as a natural cleaner because it came from the body. Some thought drinking it or washing it with could purify the blood or skin. This belief was based on ancient ideas that urine contained healing properties. Some believed that applying or consuming human or animal feces could draw out the disease. This idea came from the belief that foul substances might counteract the poisonous air or fluid causing the plague. They thought like cures, like meaning something unpleasant might cancel out another harmful thing. These practices didn't work and often made people sicker. Consuming feces and urine introduced more harmful bacteria and worsened already poor hygiene. It showed how desperate people were for any cure when they felt helpless and terrified. As you know, with little to eat, people turned to desperate measures. Rats, which were everywhere during this time, became a source of food for some. Rats were easy to catch, and since there wasn't much else to eat, starving people had no choice but to eat them. Ironically, these same rats were carried of the plague, as they often hosted fleas that spread the deadly disease. The plague killed millions of people across Europe, Asia, and Africa, wiping out entire towns and leaving survivors desperate to stay alive. Food shortages added to their misery because many farmers and food suppliers died or fled in fear of the disease. Apart from rats, people also ate animals they wouldn't normally consider food, like cats, dogs, birds, and even insects. Wild animals were hunted more aggressively, but as the plague spread, these animals became scarce too. Starvation was so extreme that some accounts even mention people scavenging for food in garbage heaps or eating roots, grass, and whatever they could find. This desperation highlights how terrifying the Black Death was, not just as disease, but as a disaster that made survival a daily struggle. Hunger drove people to do unimaginable things just to stay alive. But without these weird foods, there were plenty of simpler foods. Bread was the staple food for most people. Poorer families ate coarse, dark bread made from rye or barley. Wealthier people ate white bread made from refined white flour. Porridge was a common dish made from oats, barley, or other grains boiled in water or milk. Gruel was a thinner version, often eaten by the poor or sick. Vegetables like onions, leeks, cabbages, turnips, and beans were widely consumed. Meat like pork, mutton, and beef was eaten by wealthier people, but not often by the poor. Fish, especially salted or dried, was more common since it could be preserved for longer periods. Eating meat and fish was restricted on certain religious fasting days. Cheese and butter were common for both rich and poor. Milk was less common as it spoiled quickly, but goat or sheep milk was sometimes used. Fresh foods like apples, pears, and plums were eaten when in season. Dried foods like figs, raisins, and dates were also consumed, especially by wealthier people. Clean water was hard to find, so people often drank ale, beer, or weak wine. Herbal infusions and honey-aid drinks were sometimes used as remedies. During the plague, preserving food became important. Salting, drying, or smoking meat and fish was common. Pickled vegetables and fruits like sour apples were stored for tough times. People believed in hot and cold foods for balancing health. Simple bland foods like broth or pottage were given to the sick. Despite the food available, famine and malnutrition were common during the plague because farmers and workers also fell ill, disrupting food production. So far today, don't forget to tell us how you felt. What do you think about the food during the Black Plague? I really want to know. Let me know in the comments which plague thing you want to see next. Thanks a lot for watching the full video. See you in the next video. Stay well.